everyone. Welcome to a CPD session regarding understanding recent changes to national planning policy. My name is Andy McMullen. I'm a director and co-founder at Broadgrove Planning and Development Limited. Myself and my business partner Richard Walters started the business in 2018. We have now grown with 3 members of staff. We're a small practice based in Stockport, south of Manchester, but provide planning advice across England, Wales, and Scotland, from as far south as Devon, up north to Airdrie, and everywhere in between. As well as our large geographical coverage, we cover all sectors, including all forms of residential, commercial, energy, waste, infrastructure, retail, and leisure. We are a CPN network partner, and some of you may recognise my face from the Christmas lunch AGM that I've attended for the last couple of years. Today we're going to talk to you about recent changes to the National Planning Policy Framework, the NPPF, that came into effect in December 2024. We did a presentation as a business to CPM members in May 2024, and from reviewing that and preparing for this presentation, it's quite staggering how quickly things move on and the sentiment changes. If you have any questions, then please put them in the comments and we will do our best to answer them at the end of the presentation. Or alternatively, please contact us directly with any site-specific queries, or if you don't want to raise any questions in the chat room. This presentation is going to focus solely on the recent changes to the NPPF. We have just focused on the headline amendments and implications, so forgive me if there are some subject matters that are not addressed. If I have not covered a topic, for example, heritage, it is principally because there are no changes or the changes do not have any significant implications. So the topics that are going to be covered, the background and context, assessing housing need and supply, sustainable development, previously developed land, green belt and grey belt, supporting economic growth, flood risk and climate change, transitional arrangements, and then some concluding thoughts. So just by way of background and context, the NPPF was introduced by the coalition government in 2012 off the back of the localism agenda. This saw a shift from regional-based planning to a centralised document that sets out the government's overarching vision for national growth. The first revision was published in 2018, with 5 revisions since then. The update in December 2024 being the most significant, and certainly in my 20+ years of advising on planning, they represent the most fundamental changes since I've been practicing. The previous Conservative government made changes in December 2023, and these were definitely politically driven for a wider political landscape and had the effect of limiting development, which I'll come on to. In the December 2024 revisions, the government followed through on its promise to finalise and publish its new NPPF before Christmas, which was effective immediately. And it has unequivocally rubber-stamped the bold ambition of the draft NPPF, which was consulted on from July to September 2024 in a big way. Whilst the new NPPF will not immediately deliver the 370,000 homes per year that the government has pledged, it is a massive and instantaneous boost to the house building industry that will, over time, alongside fundamental reform set out in Labour's planning reform paper, begin to unlock supply, stimulate plan making, and be the catalyst for delivery. The final NPPF does not stray significantly from the intent and core policy changes set out in the draft NPPF, but it does provide additional clarity and certainty in putting its new national planning policy in place. The draft NPPF had already stimulated significant activity in the development industry, both in terms of land promotion and short-term speculative opportunities. And we see this ramping up significantly into 2025, as a number of local planning authorities are unable to demonstrate a 5-year land supply and seek to push their local plans forward in earnest. So the first topic I'd like to talk about is reassessing housing need and supply. The Labour government committed to building 1.5 million homes over their tenure. So what's their plan to achieve this? The first stage is reassessing the number of houses that each individual council is required to deliver. The revised NPPF published in December confirmed significant uplift in housing requirements for England of over 21% at a national level. The standard method is the mechanism which identifies the minimum number of houses a local planning authority should plan for. The new method aims to boost housing numbers by pinning targets to existing housing stocks rather than household projections as per the former method, and then uplifting needs and the target based on affordability over a 3-year average. Local planning authorities should be planning for 370,000 new homes per year combined under the new standard method of housing need. As I said, this is up from 305,000 from the previous target per year. This is compared to a current average delivery of just 221,000 net additional dwellings per year. The slight changes compared to the method published in the July consultation have resulted in a decreasing or indeed removing altogether the affordability uplift, and thus housing numbers in the most affordable areas, and increasing the affordability uplift and numbers in less affordable areas. In practical terms, what does this mean? Well, from the July consultation version, this resulted in a shift of housing numbers away from the Midlands and the North, and more greatly concentrated in London and the wider South East, where affordability is more stretched. Against the consultation draft, we saw an increase in London of 9%, in the South East of 2%, and the East of England 1% against their housing requirement, whilst all other regions have seen a slight reduction against the consultation targets. The North West, a reduction of 8%, Yorkshire 9%, and the West Midlands 6%. However, when comparing the previously adopted targets against the revised targets, there are some significant uplifts. But it's not just a case of assessing the before and after targets that each respective council has, but also what it has delivered as an authority over the last 3 years. There are some notable alarming discrepancies as detailed within the table on the screen. These are just a handful of authorities that I could have chosen, and just to select a few. So just to clarify that table in front of you there, the authorities on the left-hand side, so Kensington and Chelsea, they have delivered an average number of homes over the last 3 years of 236, and their new housing target is dramatically 5,107. Again, that comes back to the affordability multiplier. If we look at Bromley, average delivery of 229 with their new target of 3,001, and Hastings there have delivered just 142 on average, and their target has been increased to 710. I'll explain the implications of the delivery and the 5-year land supply and what that means in due course. The next topic is achieving sustainable development, strengthening the presumption. The NPPF has strengthened the presumption in favour of sustainable development, a higher bar for refusing planning permission where local plans are out of date has been inserted, requiring a strong reason instead of a clear reason. Changes to the footnotes in paragraph 11 also include national landscapes, and more clearly cross-reference to other paragraphs in the NPPF, whilst carrying through the proposed changes in footnote 8 from the draft NPPF that reinforces the presumption where, in 2 scenarios, 1, a local planning authority cannot demonstrate a 5-year land supply of housing, or 2, it is less than 75% of its housing delivery test. So just to clarify what the housing delivery test, the housing delivery test looks backwards, and you had a target over the last 3 years of so many houses per annum, and if you deliver all of those exactly as your targets, you're at 100%. So what it's saying is any authority that is less than 75%, there'll be a presumption in favour of the development you're proposing. And then obviously the 5-year land supply looks forward rather than back. Finally, paragraph 111D part 2 makes it clear that when considering framework as a whole, particular regard should be had to key policies for directing development to sustainable locations, making effective use of land, securing well-designed places, and providing affordable homes individually or in combination. The 5-year land supply is reinforced and remains the NPPF's primary tool to generate an immediate impact on housing delivery in 2025 and beyond. The requirement to demonstrate a 5-year land supply in the first 5 years of the plan period is confirmed. However, where plans are more than 5 years old, the levers to maintain housing supply is strengthened further with additional buffers of 5% to ensure choice and competition, and 20% where there has been a significant under-delivery, less than 85% in the previous 3 years. From the 1st of July 2026, for the purposes of decision making only, a 20% buffer where an authority has a housing requirement adopted in the last 5 years against the previous NPPF that is less than 80% of the new local housing need. So just to conclude on the implications of this kind of carrot and stick approach from the government. Number one, it's essential that a local authority has an up-to-date development plan. Number two, the development plan's housing target should align with the new standard methodology set out in the revised NPPF. The delivery of housing over the preceding 3 years is absolutely key. And finally, if an authority is failing on any of these, then they are particularly vulnerable to speculative development coming forward through windfall planning applications. Making effective use of land. The NPPF has strengthened brownfield decision making, reinforcing the NPPF's brownfield first approach. Substantial weight is given to bringing forward brownfield sites, with the final draft going further and stating that proposals on brownfield land should be approved unless substantial harm would be caused. We expect future planning reform around LPA decision making to go further on this. And they've further expanded the definition of what previously developed land is and widened it to now incorporate hard standing. So the next topic, and probably which will occupy most of the time, is green belt and grey belt. So this chapter, along with the changes to housing supply, arguably contains the most significant amendments to national planning policy and has been the source of much commentary within the media. Novel designations have been introduced, most noticeably the grey belt, and the green belt itself, a concept originating in the 19th century, has had its most significant alteration since the introduction post-World War II. Many of the fundamentals of the green belt remain intact. Boundaries only need to be reviewed in exceptional circumstances. Development may only occur on designated land in very special circumstances. And the fundamental purpose of the green belt remains the same. However, there are some significant amendments. Councils should now review their green belt boundaries, and I quote, where an authority cannot meet its identified need for homes, commercial, or other development through other means. In such circumstances, authorities should review green belt boundaries in accordance with the policies in the framework and propose alterations to meet these needs in full, unless the review provides clear evidence that doing so would fundamentally undermine the purposes taken together of the remaining green belt when considered across the area of the plan. This requirement is in complete contrast to the December 2023 version, which was made from the Conservative government, which unequivocally stated that councils did not need to review greenbelt boundaries to meet housing supply targets. That is to be achieved by a prescribed test set out in paragraph 148. Plans should give priority to previously developed land, then consider grey belt land which is not previously developed, and then other greenbelt locations. However, when drawing up or reviewing greenbelt boundaries, the need to promote sustainable patterns of development should undermine whether a site's location is appropriate, with particular reference to paragraphs 110 and 115 of the framework. Strategic policy-making authorities should consider the consequences for sustainable development of channeling development towards urban areas inside the greenbelt boundary, towards towns and villages inset within the greenbelt, or towards locations beyond the outer greenbelt boundary. So this is effectively creating a sequential approach to site selection. And what it's trying to prevent is that brownfield site within the greenbelt in the middle of nowhere without any connection to local services or infrastructure. It wants greenbelt sites to come forward if needed, that are on the edge of existing settlements with access to existing infrastructure. So the headlines about kind of tarmacking over the greenbelt that we've seen in quite a few media publications are not quite true. It's more the expansion of the existing settlement on greenbelt rather than just locations that are quite isolated. There are also new prescribed scenarios in which development on the greenbelt, this is for actual planning applications, will not be considered appropriate. Those detailed at paragraphs 154 to 155. Perhaps most noticeably, development on grey belt would not be appropriate, where the development would utilise grey belt land and would not fundamentally undermine the purposes taken together of the remaining green belt across the area of the plan. There is a demonstrable unmet need for the type of development proposed. So that again comes back to on housing, to the 5-year land supply position. Have they met that? And also comes back to the housing delivery test as well. The development will be in a sustainable location with particular reference to 110 and 115 of the framework. And then again, coming back to the avoiding the isolated development. And where applicable, the development proposed meets the golden rules, in quotation marks, requirements set out in paragraphs 156 and 157. So just turning to the grey belt and the golden rules. The grey belt, somewhat confusingly not capitalised in the new NPPF, unlike its verdant cousin, is defined as land in the green belt comprising previously developed land and or any other land that in either case does not strongly contribute to the purposes of including that land within the green belt. Grey belt land excludes land where the application of the policies relating to the areas or assets in footnote 7, and that's things like sites of special scientific interest, conservation areas, for example, would provide a strong reason for refusing or restricting development. The original consultation draft only required that land made a limited contribution, so the NPPF should, in theory, make more land available. Most importantly, all development on land released from the green belt, including grey belt land, will need to meet the golden rules. A development that complies with the golden rules will be given significant weight in the planning balance. Where major development, and I highlight major development because major development is residential over 10 units or commercial over 1,000 square metres, where major development would involve the provision of housing, where housing is proposed on land released from the green belt, either through plan preparation or review, or on sites subject to a planning application, the following golden rules will apply. A, affordable housing which reflects either development plan policies produced in accordance with the new framework, or, until such policies are in place, they should be set at 15% above the adopted requirement, capped at 50%. So essentially, if you've got a site coming forward for housing, that on the basis of it being grey belt land, it will need to have a requirement of affordable housing 15% above the current standard, or capped at 50%. But however, the ability to consider site-specific viability assessments on sites in the Greenbelt is also included and made explicitly clear. The second part of the Golden Rule is to make necessary improvements to local or national infrastructure. And the third part is the provision of new or improvements to existing green spaces that are accessible to the public. New residents should be able to access good quality green spaces within a short walk of their home, whether through on-site provision or through access to off-site spaces. It should be noted that under the Conservative government NPPF changes in the December 2023, it was explicit that there was no requirement to review Greenbelt boundaries to meet housing needs. This just shows what a shift in national policy there has been in the last 12 months. Next topic is supporting economic growth. Whilst the NPPF is undoubtedly housing focused, it does open up significant opportunities for commercial and other development. New paragraph 155 is clear that Greenbelt proposals relate to development of homes, commercial and other development. And importantly, it is not considered inappropriate where there is a demonstrable need for these types of developments. Paragraph 86 and 87 have substantially been expanded. Paragraph 86 contains a new sub-criteria which requires planning policies to pay particular regard to facilitating development to meet the needs of a modern economy, including identifying suitable locations for uses such as laboratories, gigafactories, data centres, digital infrastructure, freight and logistics. This adds some emphasis and would seem to suggest greater weight will be given to the value of facilitating the digital economy. Indeed, we've already started to see appeal decisions come through for data centres in the Greenbelt, which have been positively determined. Next topic is flood risk and climate change. In line with the government's ambitious climate agenda, the net zero target has been placed front and centre in paragraph 161. Previously, policy rather tamely only made reference to a low carbon future. Further previous restrictions on onshore wind energy have been entirely lifted. However, somewhat less positively, and starkly, the NPPF also contains details which highlight the perils of the climate crisis. Paragraph 162 now states that plans should take account of the risk of drought from rising temperatures. And a new paragraph 163 explicitly recognises the importance of climate mitigation as a consideration in the decision-making process. It is my view that this will require the submission of a climate change statement in all development proposals going forward, and not just for large-scale proposals that require an environmental impact assessment. Disappointingly, the proposed requirement set out in the consultation draft that councils must identify suitable areas for renewable and low-carbon energy sources have been removed. Policy merely requires that councils to consider identifying such areas. And finally, paragraph 168A states that significant weight should be given to the benefits associated with renewable and low-carbon energy generation. However, paragraph 164 of the consultation draft, which stated that councils should support planning schemes for all forms of renewable and low-carbon development, has been removed. In terms of flood risk, a new exception has been included, where a sequential test will not be required. So just to recap, a sequential test is you would have to demonstrate that there are no other sites available for what you're proposing that are at a lesser risk of flooding than your site. However, it has been updated to read, the sequential test should be used in areas known to be at risk now or in the future from any form of flooding, except in situations where a site-specific flood risk assessment demonstrates that no built development within the site boundary, including access or escape routes, land raising or other potentially vulnerable elements, would be located on an area that would be at risk from flooding from any source now and in the future, having regard to potential changes in flood risk. The implications of this are that you could have a larger site that is both at risk and part not at risk from flooding, and therefore providing that the built form and access and egress and all the major landscaping is not within flood zone 2 and 3, they're the highest risk from flooding, then there won't be a requirement to do a sequential test. This would appear to be a sensible move in the change. The next topic I'd like to cover is transitional arrangements. For all development management decisions, the NPPF is to take immediate effect, and that's stated in paragraph 231. Ongoing applications and appeals will therefore need to consider the new NPPF, and we're already seeing these in the first couple of weeks of January feeding through, for example, the data centre appeal that I referenced earlier. However, in respect of plan making, the 12th of March 2025, 3 months from the publication of the NPPF in December, is the date on which plans must consider the new NPPF, other than in the following circumstances. A plan has reached pre-submission stage on or before March 12th of March, and its draft housing requirement meets at least 80% of the new standard methodology target. B, the plan has been submitted for examination on or before the 12th of March. C, the plan includes policies to deliver the level of housing and other developments set out in the preceding local plan adopted since the 12th of March 2020, emphasising if you've got a recently adopted local plan, you're in a better position. D, the local plan is in an area that is an operative spatial development strategy and the local plan has reached pre-submission stage before the 12th of March. Or E, the plan deals with only minerals or waste matters and has reached pre-submission stage by the 12th of March 2025 or has been submitted for examination by this date as well. Where those circumstances apply, the plan will be examined under the relevant previous version of the framework, i.e. the framework prior to it getting amended in December. And this will have implications which I'll come on to. Where paragraph 234B applies, and that's if it's been submitted for examination, if the housing requirements in the plan to be adopted meets less than 80% of the local housing need, the local planning authority will be expected to begin work on a new plan under the revised plan making system in order to address this shortfall in housing need. So what that could effectively mean is you have a local authority that has submitted a plan, but that target for housing is less than is 80% or less than the new target. They'll then have to begin work on a new plan. So there'll effectively 2 plans at different stages in preparation running concurrently, and I'll come on to the implications of that. Those local plans that have reached pre-submission stage by the 12th of March and those draft housing requirements meets less than 80% of local housing needs should proceed to examination within a maximum of 18 months from the 12th of December 2024, or 24 months of that date if the plan has returned to Regulation 18 stage. So in summary, the new NPF gives LPAs a slightly longer window to submit plans or reach Regulation 19 stage if meeting 80% of the local housing need. until the 12th of March 2025. This is rather than the 1-month window which was tabled in the draft NPPF. However, the threshold for a new local plan meeting, local housing need of less than 200 units under the requirement in the consultation draft has been amended, where plans are not meeting at least 80% of the new local housing need. They will need revision unless they've reached submission stage by the 12th of March 2025. These arrangements have potential to affect a significant number of local planning authorities. Research suggests that currently there are 69 local planning authorities, that's 23%, with local plans that will be less than 5 years old by March 2025, in addition to the 33 boroughs covered by the London Plan. This leaves 194 councils that will immediately be required to use the new standard method calculation as the foundation for plan making after the 12th of March, unless they can reach one of the milestones outlined previously. 37 councils in this position have already reached examination, alongside 12 local planning authorities that will have up-to-date plans in place, but are already progressing with their next plan. The combined emerging annual housing targets in these areas totals 38,400 against a requirement of 55,240 homes per year using the new standard method. There are also 24 councils with a Regulation 19 plan with realistic prospects of submitting for examination before the revised NPPF comes into effect. So what are the consequences of this? Well, what it means is that even by the end of the current Parliament, there is potential for around 25% of local authorities to have up-to-date plans in place that will not use the new standard methodology for calculating their housing supply. This figure could be even higher if councils try to rush through plans with lower targets over the next couple of months. We have already seen 15 local authorities publish a Regulation 19 plan since the NPPF consultation was published in the summer, and 12 local authorities have submitted plans for examination. With the published transitional arrangements in place, commentators suggest that the combined total of local plan annual targets will remain at around 250 to 260,000 homes until 2027, and will only exceed the government's delivery target of 300 homes from the end of 2029. With this in mind, and given that approximately 26% of planning consents granted over the past 10 years have not been implemented, in order to have any chance of increasing house building in England to achieve the government's target, there is a need for further residential development sites to come forward through the planning system on land which is not allocated for development. So just some concluding thoughts on the revised changes to the NPPF. After over 10,000 responses to the draft consultation document and 810 changes to the previous version, the new NPPF has finally been published. If the government's rhetoric is to be believed, this document represents the biggest shift in housing policy since the post-war Attlee government. Conceptually, the ideas are bold and inventive. Now they require practical implementation. And I have strong concerns that both local authorities and the planning inspectors are just not fully equipped to handle the implication of these changes, both in terms of the plan making process and the planning application process. The standard method, in combination with proposed NPPF revisions, particularly on Greenbelt review, has the potential to unlock planning constraints to house building in many locations that so far capped local plan targets, and to stretch delivery in less constrained areas where current targets are largely already met. The final published method has slightly shifted needs into London, but there remains excuse me, upward pressure when compared with current targets, recent delivery, and the current method across all regions. The importance of setting ambitious housing targets is fundamental to supporting housing delivery. Delivery being reliant on land released by the planning system, which is shaped by the targets that are set via a housing need methodology and the national policies of the NPPF that direct how much need is actively planned for in the local plans. Despite the positivity, we conclude that we remain unlikely to reach the 1.5 million housing delivery ambition within the government's parliament, even setting aside the practical and market challenges until local plans are in place that align with the revised framework. I therefore conclude that increasing mandatory targets will be a vital lever to plan for and deliver more homes. It is possible that taken together with the other measures that the government have implemented, including the new NPPF, a delivery rate of 300,000 homes by the end of the parliament is achievable. This will be a significant uplift from recent rates, especially the low figures of recent years, and an achievement with which the government could be justifiably pleased. However, this isn't the end of the reforms, and more reforms are certainly likely. Planning practice guidance notes that sit alongside the NPPF on topic-specific issues have been promised a refresh, noticeably on viability and greenbelt. In addition, there may be further NPPF amendments later on this year to address potential unexpected and unwanted ambiguities that have been highlighted and identified at appeal. We will see in due course on this issue. As has always been the case on planning, the success of promoting a site through the planning system is often about timing and the local and national circumstances at the point of determination. And if you or your clients are considering development, I would strongly recommend that you review or re-review the position for a particular site in the context of the new NPPF, because who knows what changes to the NPPF will arise in the future. And just finally, planning has certainly has had a lot more media coverage over the last 6 months, and time will tell whether the revised planning measures will deliver the growth that the government wants. I hope that you found this presentation useful, and I can't see any questions at all within the chat room. However, if you do have any questions in the future, then please feel free to contact me on the details below. Thanks very much, and have a good rest of the day. Thank you.